Okay, so last time we talked about a few things. Have I told you guys to not let your brushes do that? Yes? So don't let them do that. Don't leave them floating in water. They're drowning. The other thing is, if you can imagine being able to see through to the bottom, what's happening to that brush is it's kind of resting like this, and then it's getting misshapen. The other thing that's happening is it's drawing moisture up into the bristles. Eventually it draws it all the way up if you leave them long enough, or if your water's really high. This wood, the paint on the actual handle starts to chip off and peel off, and pretty soon the ferrule becomes loose and then it's falling apart. If you find a brush that's like that, you can put it up in my little bed up there, the ICU, Intensive Brush Care Unit. I will repair it. But you guys could really help us out by doing this with your brushes. Letting them rest on top, or letting them rest on a piece of paper towel so they're all there ready for you, and then they're not bobbing around in water, okay? I'm seeing a lot of you, and I hear a lot of my students say that I'm a perfectionist. This is really stressful for me. I want to perfect everything right away, and that's not how painting works. It's going to be a little anxiety. You're going to have to feel that a little bit, but you can't resolve everything in every little minute area and move on to the next thing. That's going to be a really hard thing for some of you, I feel like, to get over. You're just going to have to let it look kind of messy in some spots until we kind of get enough layers on it to get the perfection that you're maybe desiring. So don't hold yourself to that, or don't think of it that way, okay? We're going to try to understand this idea of like create a layer for yourself that you can then work on top of. And it might look a little messy at some point. That's okay, okay? When you're choosing brushes, I know, having said that, a lot of you are going to gravitate towards these. They're very, very small. Reminds you of a pencil, right? Because that is where you'll feel kind of safe and comfortable. I'm not saying these are bad brushes. I wouldn't have them if they were. But what I would say to you is you're really limiting yourself if you're only working with a short handle brush, because you can't really back away on it. And here's, one of the reasons. There are a lot of really nice long handle brushes. And the reason I forced myself to start using the long handle brushes is because I was like you. I was a little upset about not having the control. I was a decent drawer, and I could shade things to look real, and painting was upsetting for me because I wanted to have that same control. And then when I switched to a bigger brush or a longer handle brush, then I forced myself to hold it a little further back. That was actually a healthy thing for me. Because it took away some of my control, and then I had to paint like a painter and not paint like a drawer, okay? So there's a difference between the two. All right, so I wanted to just follow up with you guys and have you watch, just a few things live here, and then, I'll let you back to work. But again, so if I'm painting on site here, I've got kind of a mass, and what I'll start to do, because I've got my tints and shades all mixed up for myself, I can move a little quicker. So, as I see, it's maybe darker down here. I'll hold this brush back, a little bit further intentionally, so it makes me have to let my brush work be a little bit more visible, a little bit more expressive. I can, if I work, somewhat quick enough, I can actually come back and start to sort of blend some of these things right on the page, right? We talked about that a little bit too. Sometimes you need to come back with a little bit of water if it starts to kind of dry out on you. The tempera paint, the disadvantage of that is that it's going to set up and dry really quickly. So you might have to come back in with a little bit of water to get it to actually flow. It'll thin it a little bit, but if we already have a mass underneath, this sort of blocking, this light blocking that we're doing on top, it will still show up pretty nicely. If you get it too dark, you can always go back and lighten it up. So, come back in. So with painting, there's sometimes many layers that actually happen in this until you get it where you want. I'm a big advocate for, leaving some of the brushwork show. You don't need to blend it all down, so that might be something you started to get used to, start to maybe enjoy. That's sort of personal preference, but I would definitely recommend giving it a shot before you blend things down. Just make sure that if you leave your brushwork active, that you're making sure it's following the direction of your form, so you can get that sort of dimension and depth that you get. So follow the contours of those forms, like Lau and I have talked to you about in our foundation classes. you can see maybe the advantage of me having all these tints and shades mixed up, because then I can just really, I can go a lot faster as I paint. And I would like you to kind of move a little quicker. You know, pick a brush that's maybe a little bigger than what you're comfortable with, and try to just kind of quickly kind of capture what you see. I'm always looking back and forth at my subject. And with you guys, you're looking back and forth at your image, your photograph, right? And I'm not saying don't use any small little handle brushes, but I'm saying, you know, try to have that experience where you're kind of working a little quicker, working with a variety of brushes that you can kind of move back on, okay? So you can see some examples from, you know, last semester's students, a couple of different subjects that some of you are actually tackling right now, flowers and skulls and how they handled it. And just remember, once you've got those layers down, you can always come back. So if I'm noticing, oh, you know what, I missed a shadow on that side right there, I can come back and just add it in. So you're always constantly checking. You might lose contrast, or you might say, oh, you know what, I made that too dark. Just bring a lighter value over the top of it. That will only add texture, only add dimension and depth, and it just adds another layer. And sometimes you need several, right? One thing I wanted to also mention is a lot of these long handle brushes are the actual hog hair brushes I mentioned in that video. They're actually kind of more well suited to do what you're trying to do here, which is blend like right on the surface. They're a little bit more durable. They're kind of rough and scratchy in texture, but they're ones that are gonna, you know, kind of allow you to kind of get aggressive with them and really tap them and blend them. And where the synthetics will start to kind of collapse. They're a little smoother, they're weaker. But what they're good for is if you do have a lot of paint on the surface, and I could come back and borrow this synthetic that I showed you in the beginning. If I want to, I can come back, and if I don't like all that brushwork, I can be like, oh, I like it smooth. I'll smooth it out. That's up to you. You have to decide what you like, but I would definitely recommend trying some other things before you, you know, put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, you know. The other thing you have to remember is that we view these at a distance, you know, even more than a drawing. So they will end up kind of blending here. I will do some of that blending too. So some of that perfectionism you're worried about, painting is wonderful because it kind of does that for you, you know. As you look at that from further away, it looks better, right? That's how it should be. All right, charge on, you guys. Don't worry about perfectionism. Use some long handle brush.